and give you a verbal warning that you're being recorded unless it stops doing that. Okay, I am letting everyone know that they're being recorded. And I will now do an introduction. So thank you for joining us for our Wednesday featured event for Seton Hall's Contemplative Week. The goal of these talks, events, and practices are to promote holistic well-being, enter into study more thoughtfully and deeply, and form stronger personal and communal bonds. My name is Dr. Marianne Lloyd, and I'm a professor in our Department of Psychology. I am positively delighted to virtually introduce Dr. Karen Eifler to give us a brief retreat for our Seton Hall community. Dr. Eifler received her PhD from the University of Nebraska and is a professor in the School of Education at the University of Portland. There, she also directs the Garaventa Center for Catholic Intellectual Life and American Culture, which is described on the website as a place to, and I'm quoting here, entice people from all walks of life to come together and collaborate in novel and compelling ways to shed light and explore grace in this bruised, blessed world, which sounds pretty good to me. Mm-hmm. In addition to her roles at the University of Portland, she is the new director of Collegium, whose mission is, and again I'm quoting, to help faculty at Catholic colleges and universities better understand the mission of Catholic higher education with an eye to advancing that mission in creative ways that respond to the demands of their time. Seton Hall has sent many colleagues to this week-long summer colloquy, and they've benefited from the work. If you want to hear more, not right now, but let me know, because I'm our institutional liaison responsible for finding our attendees. Now, before I turn it over to Dr. Eifler, I also want to put in a plug for her books, A Month of Mondays, Spiritual Lessons from the Catholic Classroom, and very new, out this year, congratulations, Near Occasions of Hope, A Woman's Glimpse of a Church That Can Be. I found many gems of wisdom in these, as well as the pedagogical book that she co-edited entitled Becoming Beholders, Cultivating Sacramental Imagination and Actions in College Classrooms. So now I'd like to move for a second off of the very tangible, concrete items to just say how honored I am to get to call Karen a friend. I've seen her live the missions of these organizations that she directs in both small and large ways, and I cherish the memories of when she shared her thoughts and her time with me, preemptively, including this afternoon. Plus, she's funny, which is one of my favorite gifts to have in a friend. So tonight, Dr. Eifler is here to help us with greening our lives, so please join me in welcoming her to Seton Hall with your real or virtual clapped hands, please.
All right.
Thank you, Dr. Eifler.
Thanks so much, Marianne. That was really generous and no pressure at all. I'll go ahead and invite you to put that first slide up. We're a Zoom school, not a team school, and so I'm relying on the kindness of my friend to share this technology with you, because I really can't do this without some images. I'm just going to dive in here from the left coast. I will tell you that when I was running this plan by a colleague here, he said, you know, they're already going to be suspicious of you because you're from Oregon and you're a tree hugger and that sort of thing. And as I told him about it, he said, it sounds kind of like you're sharing a sustainability plan. And the more I thought about it, the more absolutely fitting that was, this whole notion of greening, which I'll explain a little bit about that as we go along. But what I want to do first is give you just kind of the tweet version of one of my heroines in the world, really, Hildegard of Bingen, who was a Benedictine sister. Okay. When I was cleaning out my mom's stuff, I found this card that I made her when I was 16, and I don't remember what the event was, but I do remember running into this quote on a bus somewhere in Berkeley, California, that all creation is gifted with the ecstasy of God's light, and it was written by Hildegard of Bingen, and I had no idea who that was, but it made a real impression on me. And a few years ago, I started to get a little bit more into her, so I want to share a little bit what I've picked up about my girl Hildegard from my girl crush with you, so that you get like 48 seconds about this amazing woman. She lived about 1,200 years ago And there are a number of things that are really amazing to me as I learn more and more about her. One, her music is still sung all over the world today. And in fact, if you go to iTunes to purchase her music, you will find it filed not under religious music, but under New Age music, which I think is just sort of hysterically funny. And it also speaks to the timelessness of some of the harmonies that she invented, because it does have a really sort of ethereal, otherworldly, new agey sound. And I think that's one of the reasons it speaks to us today. A friend of mine who's a professional musician, a world-class soprano, said that a lot of Hildegard's music is actually written with the beat of the human heart in mind. And I think it must answer something really visceral in us. If we were gathered in a room together, we'd be listening to a little bit of her music in the background. She was a Benedictine sister, and that's going to be really important in a moment. Her parents, she was the ninth of 11 children in a time in human history when nine children were not especially blessings. And her family, for reasons that we don't know, dropped her off at a Benedictine convent when she was about 9 years old and asked the sisters to raise her and to take responsibility for the rest of her life. So her name wasn't even Hildegard when she was born. That was the name that the religious community gave her. And one of the things that always fascinates me is how people's identities can be kind of subsumed into history, and they go on to do amazing things in anonymous kinds of ways. She was an absolutely brilliant student in a time when girls weren't supposed to be necessarily scholarly, but she was very good at Latin and science and astronomy and music and biblical studies, such as they were. She was a botanist, and many of the remedies that she concocted, collecting plants and herbs in the few miles around her monastery, are still used today by naturopathic healers. A lot of her mystical wisdom and images that she created are still used today in prayers and in art all over the world. So she's pretty amazing. I love this painting of her. It's a self-portrait. So that's her looking up, and what looks like sort of red water falling down on her, in her own words, is the fire of the Holy Spirit, giving her all this wisdom and all these poems and all of these songs and all of these images and insights into how humans work and how plants and humans interact and so on. And it was coming at her so fast that she was trying to keep up with it, but she couldn't. So she actually had to hire two scribes that are on either side of her. So that's just a little bit of a glimpse into my girl Hildegard. And I really encourage you, she's having a moment now. She's actually one of very few people who's been canonized twice in the Catholic Church, once right after she died, and then recently Pope Benedict XVI recanonized her, and she's been recognized as a doctor of the Church. I want to shift now to her Benedictine formation, growing up in the world of Benedictine life, because actually, if we stopped here in this little pause for greening and for sustainability, that would actually be enough. In the Benedictine rule, there are four pillars. There's four practices that have to shape every single day of a Benedictine's life: rest, prayer, work, and recreation. We would probably pronounce it recreation, but it makes my point better if I pronounce it a little bit obnoxiously as recreation. And as you look at this image of the four pillars of Benedictine life, which one is clearly the most important? You can drop that into the chat if you'd like to, and I'll take a look at that. Any takers for which part is most important? Yeah. Yeah, that's a trick question. All right, they're all equally important, and the rule in Benedictine life is that we need to give equal attention to all those parts of ourselves. And one of the lines I really love from the Benedictine rule that Hildegard would have grown up with is that we aim to live lives that are always full but never busy. I know that you at Seton Hall, like us here at University of Portland, are entering your fourth week of classes, and the dew is a little bit off the rose, and the spit's getting real with exams coming up, and either to take them if you're a student or to respond to them if you are a faculty member or dealing with all of the things that happen on a busy university campus. And I love this idea of trying to create a life that is always full but never busy, and things don't feel out of practice, out of balance, out of shape with one thing dominating. And so that's one thing that I really hope you take away from our little bit of time here together, that if you can find ways to balance getting rested, being reflective or prayerful, getting the work done that you need to get done, and then recreating yourself through your hobbies, the sports, your family relationships, the things that give you a lot of life. Life is going to be pretty great, or in Hildegard's language, it would be very green, or in the language of the left coast, very sustainable. Always full, never busy. And the key to that in Benedictine life, and that's why you're hearing these bells every so often, in addition to our ineptitude with my ineptitude with technology, is that one of the keys is to make a good start and a good ending to everything that you do. So a real quick example for those of us who write, whether it's a paper or an article or a chapter, is very often we say we can't write unless we have 8 hours. And so, and those pockets of time are kind of rare. But we always have some time in the day, and very often when we're sitting down or getting ready to do something like write or plan a lesson or do our studying, we dither about all the other things we could be doing or how we should best begin or where should we start, or we let ourselves get obsessed with all the things that could go wrong or even get obsessed with all the things that could go right. And in Benedictine life, to make a good ending and a good beginning means that when you are writing, you set aside the time for writing. Let's say it's an hour, you set a timer. And when the bell goes off, even if you're on the verge of the ultimate truth to the universe, you make a note of where you stopped so that when you sit down the next time it is the appointed time for writing, you know exactly where you're going to start. And this isn't, it sounds really facile, it sounds almost glib the way that I'm saying that. It's a discipline that takes practice to get used to, but we sacrifice a lot of time to dithering. And if we can get in the practice of stopping when it's time to stop and not letting that take up any more space rent free in our heads, we're going to be closer to that goal of being in balance and living a life that is always full, never busy. So there's the Benedictine circle, and if you want to leave now, you've heard probably one of the most important things that I want you to take away from today. But I would like, if you're going to stay on, what I'd like to do is give you some ideas from Hildegard's practice and Hildegard's work that it's echoes of this Benedictine formation that she grew up with. We've seen one circle, and here's one of Hildegard's most famous illuminations of the Holy Trinity. But what I'd like you to do, instead of dwelling on what's the meaning of this image of the Holy Trinity, I'd like you to take a look at that and see if it reminds you of anything that you are familiar with in the world that we all inhabit. You can drop it into the chat, or if you'd like to unmic yourself and risk a vocal response, you can do that if this image reminds you of anything from the natural world. Okay. There's probably some on your quad. Tree rings, yeah. And prayer must be an answer to something else. Yeah, tree rings. All right, and we're gonna stick with that image of tree rings. Hildegard drew so much wisdom from the natural world around her, and I love the concreteness of tree rings. So we're going to go with that metaphor And Marianne, if you would go ahead one more slide, I'm going to ask people to set an intention for today. One of her most famous poems is on greening. She calls, in Latin, it's viriditas. And there's a very poignant line there where she talks about the start of the poem is how we can get bogged down. I'm translating loosely from the ancient Latin. We can get bogged down in the day-to-day crap that we have to deal with, just minutia, administrivia, just the stuff that we do to get by in life. And she says, this leads to once spiced things. And by that, I take her to mean things that we used to love, things that used to give our life some zest, some meaning, some spice, and for some reason that's kind of gone away. I found a jar in my cupboard of cinnamon sticks, all right, because I like to have props. And these cinnamon sticks, it says on the lid, expired in 1997, all right? So it's the epitome of a once spiced thing, because when I take out this cinnamon stick that expired in 1997 and I smell it, it basically smells like a popsicle stick that's really, really old. It smells like a stick. There's nothing cinnamony about it, all right? And I love, love, love the aroma of cinnamon. So this is the epitome of a once spiced thing. And what I'd like you to do to set kind of an intention as we work through some tools for getting the spice back and staying green, Hildegard style, is I'd like you to take about 31 seconds and to call into your mind. I'm not going to ask you to say it out loud. You can jot it down if you'd like to, or just keep it in your mind. But I'd like you to think about one or two things that are once spiced for you. They are things, maybe events, maybe habits, maybe attitudes that once upon a time gave you great joy, gave you satisfaction, gave you meaning, purpose, all right, happiness, contentment. And for whatever reason, the spice has gone out of that, all right? It's a once spiced thing. Okay. And I'll ask you to keep that in mind as we go through these tools. What I'm going to do now is shift to some tools from Hildegard, drawing on her wisdom of the natural world, that I have found really, really helpful in my sort of never-ending quest to stay green, to stay generative, to stay hopeful and optimistic. All right. Some of it will be in the form of gentle homework, because can't do everything in an hour, but I think it's homework that will actually bring some spice back to those once spice things. So drawing on that notion of the tree rings that was in Hildegard's vision of the go to the next transition, Marianne. Those circles of the Trinity, of the divine, reminded you of tree rings. I'm from Oregon, where trees are pretty much a religion, and Oregon State University is one of the leaders in the entire world, actually, in wood science and tree science. It's scientists at Oregon State University who are responsible probably for any telephone poles that are in New Jersey, because they put their expertise to work in terms of figuring out wood that is going to last. This is a cross section of a lab tree from Oregon State University, and those are some pretty concentric circles, all right? This is a cross section of a tree that has actually done some living out in the world, all right, who has maybe had 4 or 5 weeks of class at Seton Hall or University of Portland, or leaned into a pandemic-stricken world, or any of the things that add up to the lives that we live. And you can see that a humongous difference in these tree rings of a tree that's actually lived outside a lab is that there's brokenness, there's thick and there's thin, There's scars, all right? And all of those scars and thick and thin lines are actually tattoos. They're remembrances, they're evidence of a rich life, whether it was happy or sad or profound or shallow or whatever. There's symbolic lightning. There's disease. There's really good years of plenty of water and plenty of sun, but it's really lived. And one of the exercises I'll invite you to set a timer for on your own time, if any of this captures your imagination. One of the exercises I would invite you to do is to set a timer for 10 or 15 minutes and draw a bunch of circles that are the tree rings of your life. Maybe some of the things that it wouldn't probably be a circle for every year in your life, but maybe circles for some of the major events that have shaped you for good or for ill, some of the things that are symbolically illnesses or lightning strikes, years of plenty, years of want, years of feast, years of famine, years of being treated really well, years of having lots of nails hammered into you, whatever that might be, and to draw the rings, and if you'd like to add some words to the rings that remind you of what those stand for, or just draw the rings in a way that recall those things that have made you what you are today, maybe contributed to the spice in your life, maybe contributed to the once spiceness. I need to do a weird maneuver in my office right now because the lights just went off. I need to tell my sensor that I'm still here. So hold on just a sec. All right. So there's a little bit of homework now. I'm going to invite you now to think about trees and plants, all right? Trees and plants as we move into actual greening, and to drop into the chat, or again, say it out loud if you'd like to do that. What does a tree or any kind of a plant that's not a mushroom, so anything that grows above ground, need to be green, to stay green, to sustain a life that is generative and nourishing? You can drop it into the chat for things plants or trees need to stay green. I have a super black thumb, so the irony of me asking this question is not lost on me. We're not getting a lot of it in the West right now. There's an American Sign Language cue. Any growers out there?
I have fruit trees and they did not do well this year because we had far too little rain and far too much sun and lots of things scorched.
Okay, so what should be a good thing, all right? What should be a good thing, sun is something that trees and plants really need to grow. Of course, in excess can have the opposite effect. But generally, plants and trees, they do need sun to convert carbon dioxide into oxygen to get the whole photosynthesis. I hope there's not a botanist sitting among us because they'll be horrified at how much I simplify this. But plants generally need some sunshine. They generally need some water. And the other thing I'm going to concentrate on a little bit in our time is they need pruning. Actually, they need to be cut from time to time in order to be really generative. So what I'd like to do now is move into 3 practices that are imitating plants to keep ourselves green. And the first one is going to be that gift of sunshine. And we'll imagine, Lisa, that it's the right amount of sunshine, not the amount of sunshine that would scorch us, right? I did some as I mentioned, I have a black thumb, but that is a badge of shame in Oregon, where any idiot can grow plants. And I like to say I'm not just any idiot. We actually have moss grows in your car gaskets in Portland because of all of the rain that we get here. So I was just honor bound to try and grow tomatoes this year, and took that very seriously, watched them. I knew that I'm very interested in this whole notion of greening, so paid close attention to my tomato plants. And one of the things that I noticed is that for every tomato that was being grown, there were about 50 leaves that it turns out were supporting it, collecting the sunshine. And so that got me thinking about, what do leaves do to collect the sunshine? And it turns out that basically what they do is they let themselves receive it. There's not a big process. There's not making time for it. It is simply being present and being open to the sun that is always there. All right. So one of the practices that I'm going to suggest can help keep a person green is being fully present to sources of sunshine. And of course, I'm mostly speaking in a metaphor here as a person, not a plant. But I'd like to give us an exercise both in being present for that gift, to receive the gift of sunshine that is so important to our flourishing, and a really simple exercise that shows us what happens when we're not fully present. And I'll start with the latter right now. All right. If you have something to write with nearby, I'm going to ask you to grab it and a piece of paper. All right. Go do both of them right now. Okay. So two images here. One is of a monastic manuscript, or not a monastic manuscript, but Beowulf, all right, a medieval saga that's being copied down word for word by a little monk sitting in his scriptorium, all right? And he is faithfully copying every single word. And you flash forward a few hundred years to our friend Jeremy from the cartoon Zitz. He is studying the exact same text, all right? He is studying Beowulf for his homework, as he also is engaged in a game of solitaire on his computer. He's texting with friends, he's listening to music, he's doing lots and lots of other things while he is trying to study Beowulf. And you see on the screen with Jeremy, lots of those words are covered up, all right? What I'd like you to do is this, all right? I'm going to give you a task and I'm going to time it. The task, when I say go, is that you are going to write down verbatim, like you're a monk in a scriptorium, the sentence, multitasking is the enemy of lasting learning. All right. Multitasking is the enemy of lasting learning. I'm going to ask you to transcribe that word for word when I say go. And if you finish in 45 seconds, then I'm going to ask you to write underneath it numbers starting at one, numerals starting at one and going as high as you can. Does that make sense? You're going to have 45 seconds to do that, and we'll see how you did at the end. All right. So I'm not getting any questions. All right. So I'm going to say ready, set, go. And stop your writing. Let's see, I don't see faces. I'm not sure. Am I correct that in assuming that most of you finished writing the sentence, multitasking is the enemy of lasting learning, unless you were, maybe you can put a no, because I have no idea who the initials stand for. So there's no shame if you want to put, nope, didn't get there. But I'll assume that you finished the sentence, all right, unless you were paying super close attention to your penmanship. And if you would drop into the chat, again, I don't know who you are, so I can't be impressed or scandalized by the total here. If you wrote numerals, would you write what number you stopped at? So if you stopped at 27, write 27. If you stopped at 60, write 60. This is hard not to see faces or things in chats.
Would you like me to read the numbers out?
Okay, wow. So we have 52. We have a range of 17 to 52. All right, and everybody finished the task, which is great. All right, I think there might be a little bit of a delay here. Okay, so that gives me a lot of confidence that you are really good at transcribing and really good at putting numbers in order. So yay on that. All right, so we're going to do the exact same thing with a little bit of a twist. All right. This time, still having 45 seconds when I say go, you're going to write the sentence and the numerals, but you're going to do one letter and one numeral at a time. So rather than write out multitask, you're going to write M and then 1, U and then 2, L and then 3, and so on. Does that make sense? And you'll have 45 seconds and we'll see how we go. Now, even though I can't see faces, I did see a grimace on the one face that I can see. All right, so here we go. I believe in you. One letter, one numeral at a time, and here we go. And stop. Stop. Now, could you put yes in the conversation if you finished the sentence, no if you did not? Yes if you finished the sentence, no if you did not. Or nope in capital letters works too. All right. So we went from 100% success to it looks like 100% not so much. All right. The task didn't change, but what changed very minutely is the amount of attention we were paying to first the sentence and then the numerals. And it turns out that our brain just does not like multitasking no matter how often we engage in it, and that we're not very good at it. And this was a real tiny little example of that. I like the image of Jeremy diligently involved in the task while he's doing these other things and covering up lots and lots of the text, because that's a really graphic image that when we engage in multitasking, trying to do two things that are both demanding of cognitive energy, when we try to do two things at the same time, at best, we're about 40% efficient, all right? That's kind of like trying to swim or run or walk when when you're plugging one of your nostrils, you're still able to move forward, but it's just not efficient and it's a lot more work. And so when we have all these deadlines raining down on us, one of the things I like to try and do is encourage myself as a receiver of many deadlines and encourage people in my orbit to try to do one thing at a time, because you're much more likely to be able to to get that done in a reasonable amount of time, especially if you're consistently making good endings and good beginnings. All right. So the last thing I'd like to say here in um, this little section on sunshine as a gift for greening is to try to be fully present to the task that you are engaged in, and in the things that give you pleasure, and I'm going to give you some gentle homework in a moment, to be fully present to that too, because that's going to be much more nourishing. So here's your gentle homework for another time. You can do it tonight if you'd like to. Those of you whose faces I can't see, you may well do it now for all I know. But what I'm going to invite you to do here, again, set a timer so that you can make a good start and a good ending. And I would like you to choose one thing that gives you sensory pleasure. All right. If I were to, well, here's mine. All right. We beg for oatmeal chocolate chip cookies in our dining commons, and we get them about every 58 days. I'm unclear why it's such a hard ask in our cafeteria. But if I were doing your homework, I would want to be fully present to the aroma of this amazing cookie, and I would want to take one bite and just savor it, and to take 10 minutes to consume this major treat. All right. Or if you have spiced cinnamon and you love it. Now this is one spice, so I'm pantomiming here, but if an aroma gives you a lot of pleasure, or the sight of a candle gives you pleasure, or the sight of a photograph of a beloved member of your family or friend or pet, all right, or your puppy's tummy, all right, set the timer and be with the puppy's tummy, scourging the puppy's tummy for 10 full minutes without listening to a podcast at the same time, without sorting out a thorny problem that's involved in work, without being on a phone or FaceTiming, but be 100% there for those 10 full minutes. And one of the things I would triple dog dare you to do is to give yourself 5 or 10 minutes that you calendar into your day every day, to set a timer and to let one of your senses be completely infused with something that makes you feel alive and green and generative. And to, again, the key here, I think, to success is to be 100% there, not 40% there, not 50% there, but just to be with that, like the leaves of my tomato plants are just there receiving the sun that they need. All right. So gift of sunshine is our response to the gift of sunshine in our pursuit of greenness is to be 100% there, to be fully present no matter what the task is. All right. Plants need water to live. All right. And what the angle I'm going in on this particular gift is reimagining tears, which I've always been embarrassed by because they make me look weak. They run my mascara. I'm an ugly crier. All right. I've always tried to hide them. But tears have been reframed for me in the last few years. A letter from St. Ignatius of Loyola, who doesn't get much more He-Man than that. He realized that there were times in his life that he should be able to cry. He should cry for a friend or a brother who died. He should cry at failings of his church. He should cry at his own failings, and he couldn't for some reason. And he prayed for the gift of tears, and he called tears holy water that bring our prayers and our yearnings in a holy river directly to a God who loves us. All right. And so the gift of tears is something that keeps our own soil moist and fruitful. All right. And the homework for this is going to connect to the times in our life when there was somebody there who was vulnerable, when we were vulnerable. There was somebody there when we were vulnerable. These are images of my two of my absolute favorite things in the natural world. One of them I've seen, one of them I haven't seen, but it's on my bucket list. The leaves there, the autumn leaves, they're starting to turn here, are glorious in Oregon. I think they're probably even more glorious in your part of the world and in New England. And the aurora borealis is the thing that's on my bucket list. Both of them share this phenomenon. They're both natural phenomenon, but what they share is that those reds and vermilions and maroons and golds that we so admire in leaves, the pigments for that are always present in leaves, but the green pigment, the chlorophyll pigments, kind of yell at, they dominate for most of the year. And it's only when the chlorophyll starts to shut up that the reds and the golds and the vermilions are able to do their thing. Similarly with the aurora borealis, the northern lights, the dancing colorful wavy lights that are on the north and the south poles, the capacity for that is always there. Those are again, I'm really simplifying here, but these are electrons cutting through the electromagnetic energy on the planet. And it turns out that that activity is happening over the entire orb of the Earth. But on the North Pole and the South Pole, the atmospheric protective layer is at its thinnest. It's really stretched quite thin there. And so those electrons are able to get in and do their magic, something that is always there, but getting shouted over. Another example, kind of, not quite as dramatic, are these plants. These are actual thriving plants that I have not killed in a while. These are called Talandia plants or Talandia. And the way that you water a Talandia plant is that you kind of breathe on it, and the moisture in your breath is enough moisture for the Talandia to continue to flourish because it has little teeny hooks. It's not a cactus, but it's got these thousands of tiny little hooks on it that bring the moisture into it. And your homework for this habit of tears, all right, is to think back to the times, and it might have been recently, it might have been today, it might have been 5 years ago, whatever. You are the boss of you. But what I'd like you to think about is a time when you were vulnerable, all right? Your shields, so to speak, were more like the North and the South Pole than other parts of the Earth, or the chlorophyll in you, the greenness in you had kind of died out, and somebody was there to appreciate the beautiful golds and maroons that are part of you, even at your most fragile. And what I will ask you to do is to set a timer. There's definitely a consistent theme here. Set a timer, and I'd like you to identify, if you do this by handwritten note, all right, I'd like you to identify one person who has been there for you to see you at your weakest and lift you up, who has breathed on you and brought you back to life, who has seen the glory that is you, even at your most vulnerable, and celebrated that and supported that and scaffolded that for you, all right? And to write them a simple but sincere thank you note, all right? That's a very old-fashioned kind of task. If you do that the old-fashioned way with a thank you card, I keep a bunch of them in my desk, all right? If you do them on an old-fashioned writing by hand, then you do one in 10 minutes. If you choose to send an email, which can also be heartfelt, we just don't get to exchange DNA that way. If you do this via email, then in those 10 minutes, I'm going to ask you to thank 2 people who have seen the goodness in you and and sustained you and helped you at your most vulnerable at a time when you were weeping, whether it was metaphorical or physical. Does that make sense? That work? So that's another bit of homework, and then we're going to move to the last gift. All right, that that plants and trees need, and that is pruning. And this was almost a jarring image for me to put together, because those pruning shears look almost evil to me. To me, that kind of looks like a robot that wants to swallow things up. It looks almost evil, but it turns out for trees and plants to flourish, every so often branches need to be cut off, and the doing of that allows them to flourish. But it's not just any branches, and it's not just any time. When you are pruning, you have to be mindful that there's not a major heat coming or there's not a major frost. You have to cut it at a very particular angle. You never cut off more than about a third of a plant. It's very, very intentional what has to go. All right. And I want you to keep that in mind. First, the pain of letting go, the pain of being pruned, and the absolute necessity of that for health. And I want to show you one of my son's favorite toys. This is Stretch Armstrong. And the playfulness, the play factor in Stretch is that he's this figure that you can pull on his legs, you can pull on his arms as much as you want. And then when you let go, they're supposed to go back to their original dimensions. But it turns out, if you're an exuberant 8-year-old boy, all right, you just keep pulling and pulling and pulling, and pretty soon Stretch can't be stretched anymore, and in fact he breaks and he dissolves. He doesn't dissolve. He oozes this gelatinous gunk that gets all over the floor. All right, and it feels to me, in the pace of life that so many of us set up for ourselves, that we are like Stretch Armstrong, allowing ourselves to be pulled and pulled and pulled and pulled until something gives, whether it's a gooey pile on the floor, which I sure hope doesn't happen for you, or something less visceral, something breaks, and that is not a green or sustainable approach. And so my homework for you, and we're going to get the first 38 seconds of it done right now, is to think about your life, your calendar, your to-do list right about now. All right, maybe for the month ahead, maybe for the semester ahead. If you're feeling very frantic, maybe for the next couple of days. All right, and I want you to look at those obligations that you have taken on, and I'm going to ask you to consider a healthy pruning that you could do, a healthy no that you could commit to for your own greening, your own well-being. Now it's not. I was talking about this with some teachers, and they said, "Okay, I don't want to teach third grade anymore." Okay, it would probably not be a great idea to tell the principal, "I am not going to be coming to work anymore." All right, that's not quite the level of no that I'm looking for, even if it is something to aspire to at a reasonable time. These don't need to be, I don't want them to be no's that make somebody else's life really difficult or miserable, all right? But a no that gives you back some of yourself, all right? And so what I'd like to do right now is pause and allow you, if you'd like to close your eyes and imagine your calendar, imagine some of the things coming up. Imagine requests that you are already starting to dread. Maybe it's around the holidays. Maybe there's family requests or friend requests that are coming that you know are going to be happening around the holidays, or rituals that you participate in despite the fact that they bring you not only no joy, but they actually sap you. Those are probably obligations that you could find a way to say a gentle no. Not a I'm sorry no, but no, that's not going to work this year. All right, so let me just pause for about 30 seconds and give you a chance to make a list or to close your eyes and think about things you would like to eliminate, and then I'll give you your homework. All right, homework now and homework proximal. Um, your homework with what you have just been thinking about is to start rehearsing the no that you are going to do, the pruning that you are going to do in the interest of greening yourself, of nourishing yourself, of creating space in your life that allows you, that allows the sun to get in, that allows the water to get in, that allows you to flourish and be present for the things that are top priority. All right, and I will again triple dog dare you to issue that gentle no, that no of pruning for your own health in the next couple of months. All right. So that is your last bit of homework. All right, and we're going to head into closure now. And so what I'd like you to do is revisit the list or the idea that you had at the very beginning of something that was once spiced, something that brought savor and sweetness, savor or sweetness into your life, and that you want to get back. Not a once spiced thing that deserves to be tossed because it's just not important anymore, but something that you want back. And I'm going to invite you to bring that into our closing time of prayer and contemplation. So if you can summon that into your mind, or if it's helpful to you to have it in front of you as a word, that would be great to do that. This isn't homework, it's just I can't let a session on greening go by without probably my favorite line in all of the Rule of Benedict: to make time in your day, every day, for beauty, because order and beauty are contagious, so are disorder and ugliness. And I might attach that to the sensory 5 or 10 minutes that you're going to be giving yourself as homework if you take that challenge out of this time of greening. Beauty is part of a sustainability, is part of a greening plan for somebody. So you have an intention for your prayer. And because we've been talking about plants all day, I wanted to close with a very abbreviated Visio Divina, sacred seeing. I'm going to combine the sacred seeing with Lectio Divina, sacred listening. So I'm going to just read the story of the parable of the sower in a contemplative, kind of stately pace. I'm going to invite you really and truly to listen to the words as best you can, but to focus in on the image in front of you, which is an illumination from the St. John's Bible of the sower and the seed. All right. And as you hear the story, I would invite you either to offer the intention of the once spiced thing that you want to rejuvenate, or as the thing that is the seed being planted, and take that with you into this abbreviated, but I hope contemplative experience of image and word. So I invite you to just take a big, nice big breath, get comfortable in your seat. Maybe you need to shift a little bit to be comfortable for another couple of minutes. All right. Could we go back to thanks, Marianne. Hear this. A sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seed fell on the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Other seed fell on rocky ground where it had little soil. It sprang up at once because the soil was not deep. And when the sun rose, it was scorched and it withered for lack of roots. Some seed fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked it, and it produced no grain. And some seed fell in rich soil and produced fruit. It came up and grew and yielded 30, 60, and 100-fold. He added, "Whoever has ears to hear ought to hear." Going back to the Benedictine circle of work and prayer and recreation and rest being fundamental to a green life, a sustainable life, a balanced life. I don't want to leave out the gift of rest. I'm going to my next class, all right, but I think it's closing in on the end of your workday over on the right coast. So I'm going to bid you peace and rest and greening and deep gratitude for taking an hour of your day to spend with one of my favorite people from humanity, Hildegard of Bingen. And I hope you've picked up some tools that might help you live a life that is always full, but never busy and always very green. All right. Thank you so much, and blessings on the rest of your week, the contemplative week and mindfulness week, and the rest of your semester and year. Okay.
Thank you so much.